President Obama and Xi Jinping are set to sit down for what will likely be their last formal dedicated meeting on the sidelines of the G20 summit in September. We have Meredith Sumter here to tell us about how the relationship between the U.S. and China has changed since Obama was elected in 2008. Meredith?
Thanks, Kelsey. Well, reading media articles, one would think that there is more tension in the bilateral relationship now than in 2008. And largely, I think this is broadly true. There has been a power rebalance in the last 8 years. China is relatively more powerful than it was in 2008, and it certainly has more impact on U.S. interests. But what I think is actually more interesting is not so much that there is this more apparent tension in the relationship, but even with those tensions, the relationship that we see now in 2016 is on much more stable footing than in years past. I would point to three primary reasons. First, bilateral cooperation is at an all-time high. The U.S. and China now have more areas to cooperate in and more shared interests that they are exploring than ever before. Second, I would point to improved communication channels between the U.S. and Chinese government agencies, not only across the agencies, but from the top down. So you have more regularized working relationships that allow U.S. and Chinese officials to focus on their shared interests and to work through irritants in the relationships when they arise. And as a result, the relationship is more durable and I would say more capable of withstanding tension now than it has in the past. One example would be U.S. President Barack Obama can now meet with the Dalai Lama without the Chinese side cutting off formal ties, even temporarily, as they might have done in the past.
Overall, how might you classify the relationship now between the U.S. and China?
So as a result of the factors I just laid out, I would say that we are looking at a more mature relationship between China and the U.S. Than it perhaps was before. And I think it's partly driven by the recognition by the leaders of both sides on how critical it is that they find ways to constructively work together despite the irritants that will inevitably come into the relationship between the world's two greatest powers.
How have ties at the very top between Obama and Xi contributed to this more mature relationship?
I would say that that relationship is actually the critical determinant of this more stable, mature, durable relationship. Presidents Obama and Xi over the years have developed what I would describe as a very constructive and candid working relationship. They communicate regularly across a variety of interests in the U.S.-China relationship through phone calls, through letters, through emissaries, and through in-person meetings. And so what you have is you have a relationship in which both world leaders are able to communicate very clearly about their respective interests and concerns and to address those concerns directly. And as a result, there is greater clarity on each other's policy objectives and red lines. And whereas before, I think you had more uncertainty. And so what this means is that this greater clarity, this more communication and candid communication, I would say, means that there is a lower risk of miscalculation in the relationship, and thus a lower risk of tensions spiraling into confrontation or potential conflict.
So what happens when a new president gets elected in November in the U.S.?
Well, I would say that new ties will have to be cultivated. And it would be critical, I think, for President Xi to be able to forge with either a President Clinton or a President Trump the kind of candid, constructive relationship that he currently has with Obama. And this is critical because, right now both leaders have a clear-eyed view of how their relationship and the stability of that relationship impacts, and not only each other, but it impacts both regional and global geopolitics.